The king of pop. A legend whose name still echoes through every corner of the music world, but behind the iconic music, the flashy performances, and the glittering fame, lies a dark truth about Michael Jackson's final days. What really happened in the lead up to his untimely death? The answers may shock you. Let's take a deep dive into the tragic and mysterious end of Michael Jackson. Today, we're talking about one of the most heartbreaking and mysterious events in music history: the death of Michael Jackson. His passing on June 25, 2009, shocked the world, leaving fans and the industry in disbelief. But as time has gone on, more and more details have come to light, details that reveal just how troubled and complex his final years really were. So, what was going on behind the scenes? What dark secrets are hidden in Michael's last days? Let's break it down. From the moment Michael Jackson stepped into the spotlight, he was never just a musician. He was an icon, a living legend, and the embodiment of pop music. But with all that fame and success, came an immense amount of pressure. Michael's life was constantly under a microscope, and after decades of being in the public eye, that pressure began to take its toll. By the mid-2000s, Michael's life had become a whirlwind of legal battles, financial problems, and personal struggles. Despite his incredible success, his career was on the decline. The king of pop had become more of a shadow of his former self. With the Neverland Ranch facing foreclosure and rumors about his health, Michael was dealing with much more than anyone realized. In 2009, Michael Jackson announced something that fans had been waiting for: his comeback. He was preparing for a 50-show residency in London called the This Is It Tour, and the world was excited to see the king of pop return to the stage. But what the public didn't know was just how fragile Michael really was behind the scenes. Michael was in his 50s, but he looked and acted much older. He had physical and emotional scars that no one could see from the outside. His health was deteriorating, and his addiction to prescription medications was becoming more and more of a concern. In fact, the preparation for the This Is It tour was anything but smooth. Michael was often seen as disoriented during rehearsals, and reports surfaced that he was physically weak. Those closest to him noticed a man who seemed to be struggling not just with his health, but with his sense of self. Michael Jackson had been battling an addiction to prescription drugs for years. At the time of his death, he was reportedly dependent on painkillers, sedatives, and other medications to help him cope with his pain, both physical and emotional. In the years leading up to his death, Michael had been under the care of Dr. Conrad Murray, who would later face charges for administering the lethal dose of propofol that ultimately caused Michael's death. But Michael's addiction wasn't just about one doctor, it was a systemic issue, with many different people enabling his habits. Reports claim that Michael had a massive supply of medications, and it seemed like his addiction was spiraling out of control. He was relying on the drugs to get through his performances, to deal with the pressure of his comeback, and even to help him sleep. But what was supposed to help him cope was ultimately the thing that took his life. Beyond the physical toll of his addiction, Michael's emotional and mental state was deteriorating, too. Those who were closest to him during his last years reported that he was increasingly isolated, anxious, and paranoid. Despite being surrounded by people, Michael felt alone in his struggles. His mental health was clearly suffering, and he didn't have the support he needed to navigate the pressure of his comeback. There were also rumors of Michael's complex relationship with his family. While he was close to some members, it seemed that others took advantage of his vulnerability, which added to his emotional burden. The loss of his childhood and his experiences growing up in the Jackson family's intense spotlight shaped much of his emotional struggles in later years. As Michael's final days approached, things became even more desperate. He was preparing for the This Is It tour, but the rehearsals were chaotic. Many reports say he was weak, unable to keep up with the rigorous schedule, and yet, he pushed forward determined to deliver to his fans. But behind the scenes, Michael's health was deteriorating rapidly. Those around him were deeply concerned, but no one seemed to be able to stop the downward spiral. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson was found unresponsive in his Los Angeles home. Despite the efforts to revive him, Michael passed away from acute propofol intoxication, an anesthetic used to keep him unconscious while he slept. The news was devastating. Michael Jackson was gone, and fans worldwide were left in shock. But as the investigation unfolded, the dark truth about the role prescription drugs played in his death became more clear. Dr. Conrad Murray, who had been Michael's personal physician, was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter for administering the fatal dose of propofol. But many believe that Murray was merely the scapegoat in a much bigger issue. Michael was living in an environment where multiple people were enabling his addiction, and yet, no one stepped in to stop it. Murray's conviction was a small victory for justice, but the truth remains that Michael Jackson's death wasn't just the result of one bad decision, it was the outcome of years of neglect, both physical and emotional. It's a tragedy that could have been avoided if the people around Michael had taken action sooner. So, what does this all mean? Michael Jackson's death is one of the greatest tragedies in music history. He was more than just an entertainer, he was a global icon, someone who changed the world with his music. But behind the scenes, he was fighting battles that many didn't see. His final days were marked by isolation, addiction, and the constant struggle to maintain his image and legacy. And now, years after his death, we're left to grapple with the darker side of Michael Jackson's life. But what does this tell us? Can we truly separate the artist from the person? What do you think about the dark truth behind Michael Jackson's last days? Do you believe more could have been done to save him? Let's keep the conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to know more about untold stories and hidden truths from the world of music, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.